telling you, man, a lot of men that I know grew up with, was sleeping with men back in the day for setups in the clubs, for paint jobs, for rims, and they probably still sleeping with them. And you know I ain't lying. You know I ain't lying now.
Anybody, this man slept with over 600 women. 600 women and gave them HIV, and majority of those women were.
And if you are not catching my drift, I'm talking about DL men. Nearly 5,000 women. Did you know that black women rates are almost 10 times higher than white women?
For lawsuit, bro, like that's serious stuff, bro. You playing like that? Like, I didn't know until you left the show that you had HIV, bro.
You want to know something that's disturbing? The amount of people coming on TikTok talking about how people gave them AIDS, confronting these people. I have never in my life seen so many people posting about contracting HIV or AIDS. And it's not just random stories on TikTok. Statistics don't lie. Right now, in 2026, the black community in America is still getting hit hardest by HIV. And I'm talking numbers that don't make sense if you just look at behavior, education, or access to healthcare. So the real question is, why? Because if you actually look at the numbers over time, something feels off. Now, Orlando Brown has a theory. Now, I know Orlando has a reputation. He's been through a lot publicly. Mental health struggles, legal problems, the whole thing. But see, sometimes the people who've been completely removed from the mainstream system are the ones who see it most clearly because they're not worried about burning bridges or losing a bag. So anyway, according to Orlando, this HIV crisis in the black community isn't a coincidence. He said it's not just about bad choices or not using protection or whatever they feed you in health class. I mean, sure, that's part of it, but Orlando claims it's deeper than that, and he hinted that this could be some sort of social experiment. And it sounds crazy until you hear about cases like South Carolina DJ Jason Pope, who infected over 600 black women and girls. But here's the crazy part. Despite these claims, he hasn't been charged specifically with intentionally infecting someone with HIV. Now you know how people have been saying for years that the CIA will plant someone in the black community to ruin it from the inside? Well, I'm not saying this is what happened here, but once you hear more details about this case, it will definitely make you ask some questions. So let's talk about what the actual HIV statistics look like for 2026, this bizarre Jason Pope case, and why Orlando Brown might actually be onto something. So there's a clip of Orlando floating where he's talking about MK Ultra. And for anybody who doesn't know, MK Ultra was the CIA's secret mind control program back in the 50s and 60s, where they experimented on American citizens without their consent. And no, it's not a conspiracy. The government eventually admitted to it, although they destroyed most of the documentation. So Orlando brought this up and said, we're all going through a social experiment right now, and if you don't pay attention to what media you consume and what people you idolize, they're gonna have you doing things that directly cause you harm.
What we don't know is we've all gone through this experiment. It's called MK Ultra. This is what we've all been going through, and we are all just waking up from. You know, if you don't know Leviathan, but Belphegor, if you don't know Satan, if you don't know Lucifer, if you don't know what you're talking about and how they're coming, if you don't know how to identify it, then you start smoking all kinds of shit and drinking and getting off stuff because you can't see it coming. Then all of a sudden, you're not the same anymore either. Okay? Because this is very real. That's why they're doing that shit.
So basically, Orlando's whole point was that there are forces, whether you call them government or something else, that are running experiments on the population. And honestly, when you look at this HIV crisis in the black community, the pattern fits what he's describing. Let me give you the 2026 statistics. Black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population, but when it comes to new HIV diagnoses, black people account for over 40% every single year. And that gap has been sitting there for decades. And black women specifically are getting diagnosed at a rate 10 times higher than white women. Now here's the part people don't talk about enough. When experts explain why these gaps exist, they point to things like unequal access to healthcare, lack of insurance, poverty, and medical mistrust. And those are definitely real factors. But here's the question they never ask. Why do those factors hit the black community so much harder? Like, they'll tell you black Americans don't trust doctors, but they don't tell you that medical mistrust is driven by real historical injustices, like the Tuskegee syphilis study, forced sterilizations, and racial discrimination against black patients. For example, did you know that black women in the US are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy complications than white women? And that's true for all black women, regardless of income, education, or socioeconomic status. And it's not genetic or biological factors either. So what is it then? Well, I think you know the answer. And that's where Orlando's point about social experiments starts to feel less crazy. You look at the history and you start wondering, do we really think they suddenly developed a conscience and stopped doing these experiments? Now let me tell you about a case that should have been national news but somehow wasn't. Jason Pope is this white DJ from Florence, South Carolina, who goes by the name DJ Kid. And for years, he threw parties, promoted events, and built a reputation in the local music scene. But he was also doing something else behind the scenes. Back in December 2011, a 13-year-old black girl walked into a hospital in Florence County and told a deputy she just found out that a man she was intimate with, a 34-year-old man who gave her weed and money, had AIDS, and she named Jason Pope. However, the case was marked unfounded and closed. But then, over the next few years, more reports came in, and more girls came forward. In 2018, a family member literally walked into a police station and handed a deputy a phone with evidence on it. But that case was administratively closed. That same year, investigators found 6 SD cards hidden in a sock in Jason Pope's bedroom drawer while 2 girls were inside his home. And these girls were not adults. But you know what he was charged with? Weed possession. That's it. They booked him and he walked out the door on a weed charge. Now here's where it gets even darker. On his own Facebook page, Jason Pope made a disturbing post and wrote that he had 693 bodies. And then he specified that they were all black females. 693. So when investigators finally dug into this case, they found that between 2017 and 2019 alone, Pope had been black girls, none of them adults. On top of that, prosecutors said he intentionally infected at least one of his victims with HIV. And if you look at the timeline, the first report was in 2011. That means this went on for nearly a decade before he was finally stopped. He was finally arrested in August 2019. But here's the thing that should make you sick. Even after all that evidence, Jason Pope pleaded guilty in 2023 to 5 counts of and 8 other felony charges. And instead of life in prison, a judge gave him 30 years, suspended to 19. Just 19 years for nearly 700 girls. And again, these girls were not adult women.
A predator gets reduced sentence after 700 minors. What the actual? That's what it says. Her Atlanta Black Star, major South Carolina traffic case that languished in the court system for more than 4 years, came to an anticlimactic conclusion in August 2023 when 40 Jason Roger Pope, white disc jockey, received a reduced sentence after pleading guilty to 13 felony charges of having sex with children, including hundreds of underage black girls.
But what's even crazier is that this case barely made the news, and there isn't even a Wikipedia page on Jason Pope. Don't you think that's a little weird? Almost 700 victims, and most people have never even heard about this case. Now imagine if this was a black man and these were 700 white girls. And yes, systemic racism is definitely part of this, but it goes deeper than that. A lot of people have been speculating that Jason Pope wasn't just some random sicko, but that he was some kind of government operative. Now, I'm not saying I have proof of that. I don't. But a lot of people have pointed out the same things I just laid out. Reports from multiple victims were ignored for years, and when they finally caught him, he got a slap on the wrist. And they didn't even mention the hive part in his charges. Intentionally spreading hive is literally attempted murder, and yet that part was completely ignored in his indictment. And then on top of all that, the media barely covered this case? You can't tell me something doesn't stink here. Well, let me show you what this TikTok creator uncovered, because it seems like Jason Pope wasn't just a DJ. He also allegedly had deep connections to political elites, and he was getting away with all types of crimes with no consequences for literally decades.
Pictured here is Jason DJ Kid Pope. This white supremacist went on to infect over 693 young black girls with HIV/AIDS knowingly. I am not joking. His criminal rap sheet goes all the way back to December 1995. That's 26 years. December 1995, he was charged with impersonating an officer, convicted, and given a 1-year sentence that was suspended and 2 years of probation. In February of 1996, he was charged with the prostitution of a minor and given a 30-month sentence that was suspended. August of 1997, he was charged with assault and battery, convicted, and only received a fine. In January of 1998, he was arrested for trespassing and resisting arrest, resulting in another fine. April of 1988, he was convicted of disorderly conduct, received another fine. March 1999, charged with forgery and larceny, no conviction. December of 2000, charged with forgery, finally sentenced to just 90 days in jail. September of 2001, he went on to be charged with forgery again and given a suspended sentence of 5 years and 2 years of probation again. Again, March of 2002, obtaining signatures under false pretense, no conviction. October of 2002, opened a retail business without a license, suspended sentence of 30 days. May of 2003, driving on a suspended license. He took a small break from the white privilege, picked it back up May of 2006, and did malicious injury to personal property, but didn't get sentenced for either. October of 2006, charged with the illegal distribution of a recording. I bet you can guess what he recorded. January 2007, once again, operating a retail business without a license. May of 2007, charged again with illegal distribution of a recording and just given a 2-year sentence of probation. November of 2011, convicted of unlawful use of a phone, no jail time. December 2011, he gave a 13 and 16-year-old girl AIDS on Thanksgiving Day. No charges were filed. He did not serve any time.
So you're telling me a person can get away with all that and not have connections to someone higher up? This is more than just white privilege. This is something way deeper than most people are not ready to hear about. Now let me connect this back to what we were just talking about. Remember what Orlando Brown said about MK Ultra and how we're all going through a social experiment? I'm not saying Jason Pope was working for the government. I can't make that claim without evidence. But the point is the pattern. Orlando said we're in a social experiment. Look at this case and tell me he's wrong. Why wasn't intentionally infecting girls with HIV part of his indictment? Why did the government ignore that part? Well, you let me know what you think. Is Orlando Brown onto something? Are the rising cases of HIV in the Black community simply the result of a reckless lifestyle and lack of health care? Or is it something deeper? Drop your takes below and stay tuned for the next video.